Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Empty Event for 2020. Tom Albano here along with Nick Fodera and Nick Morgasen, just days before Christmas is about to hit. And gentlemen, it's another sidetrack. It's our second of two episodes where we're taking a detour, taking a sidetrack. And this one is going to be, it's still going to be a little heavy, but it's not going to be as heavy as our last one. So this is not going to be a conversation about, a sports league. This is going to actually be about a team. A team, of all the teams that we are going to pick and we are going to look back on with 2020. No, it's not our beloved Yankees. No, it's not the Jets who are nearing 0-16. No, it is the Washington football team.
The artists formerly known as the Redskins. So, if you know anything about us, about the podcast, about back in our podcasting days, we would always say, because this has been an issue for as long as we've been in the game.
I'd say even longer than that.
Yeah, even longer than that, as a matter of fact. So, people have been begging Dan Snyder. Well, not demanding.
No, it's not. It's not begging. It's it's when.
That he needed to change the name. And we never thought he would. We thought, and me personally, I said, I
never thought so either.
He's that stubborn.
Wait a minute. He never changed the name. He just dropped the name.
Yeah. So
yeah, he didn't even change it. He just said, you know what? Team name here.
I still think it should still be TBA.
Yeah. Well, all right. So finally, sponsors had to get involved, and that's why he had
FedEx. Yeah, they were the ones who own the naming rights.
The one who owned the naming rights to the field said, "We will, get out of here." You had the managing partners basically
40%. Yeah,
were getting pissed, and at the end of the day, Dan Snyder had to change the name. But instead of changing it to a normal team name, this is what he said: that there is 2 to 3 weeks left before the season. So I understood, maybe they're not going to have the jerseys in time. Maybe they're not going to have the helmet decals in time.
The color code, yeah.
Right, so I said, you know what? If they're going to change their team name and, but they still have to use the Redskin, uniform, okay, because 2 to 3 weeks before the season, you're not going to get a uniform and a field and everything.
Well, I'll ask a question, and when people are watching this, comment down below on the video when I throw this question out. Do you think that oh my God, why am I forgetting the owner's name all of a sudden?
Dan Snyder.
Dan Snyder. Well, it's a very forgettable name, by the way. If Dan Snyder was looking for attention, do you think Dan Snyder was looking for attention when he decided to call the team the Washington football team?
I had said at the time, resuming what I was saying, but they could call it the Washington, something else, and still wear the Redskins colors and everything for a year because there was only a few weeks before the season. But then they pulled a move that I thought, you couldn't get any worse. I thought it got worse. You were just going to be the Washington football team, which is very particularly funny because Washington football team, if you're going to use the acronym, it's WFNT. One letter swap away from
being an obscenity.
That's unbelievable. That's really unbelievable to me because I just what can Dan Snyder do next? And we'll get into some of this where we talk about the cheerleaders and the investigation. And how
he just recently apologized for, and apparently this culture of sexual harassment and abuse was going on for years, but now he's saying, "Oh, my bad, sorry," as if you cut in line. So,
no, actually, as you would say, Nick, when someone makes a mistake, no hablo inglés.
Yeah, no hablo inglés. But that's exact. But look, this is the football version of the Streisand effect. Have you ever heard of the Streisand effect, fellas?
Streisand effect? No.
I've heard of some of what you're talking about.
By trying to keep things under wraps, you end up drawing more attention to it.
Yes. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Efforts to conceal something draw more attention than it
makes sense.
To conceal.
But what bothered me through this whole thing, so apparently they paid these cheerleaders to allegedly be I don't know if this is the right word, but allegedly be escorts to
Escorts,
clients.
girls.
Allegedly, yes.
And they did like bikini photo shoots, and it was bizarre. I'm like, what? And the clients who paid for this stuff were getting they would go to an island, and it was like a vacation, and it was a resort, and I'm like, what is going on here?
Like, what is this?
It's just, you wouldn't be able to make a good fiction writer could come up with that exact plot and be laughed out of every.
I was gonna say, would Hollywood come up with something like that?
That nobody would believe it, especially the year they've had, discounting everything that happened with the name.
But you know what?
Take either one of these scenarios isolated, nobody would believe it.
But you know what? One of the best Christmas gifts that I think a Washington football team fan could receive is if Dan Snyder would sign on the dotted line and sell the football team.
I mean,
that would be a Christmas miracle, the likes of which that would be like Tiny Tim not dying.
I was gonna say that a gift would be the fact that Washington football team is in the running to win the NFC East right now.
That's unbelievable.
Or at least they have been. At the time of this recording, they are.
That's more of a Christmas practical joke, so rather than a Christmas miracle.
That reminds me.
I don't know where we stand there, but I mean, just looking at the clips you're about to see, it's like you can almost see us laughing while trying not to. We're trying not to laugh, but
I was expecting.
Decorum prevents it.
And by the way,
because I thought all the off the field troubles were going to pile on the field.
And some of this, let's be clear, some of this is not a laughing matter. In some regard.
No, none of it. Well, their response to it is so comedic as to be horrifying.
Well, I was gonna say it's more of the fact that it's more of an of course it is. Of course this is Washington.
And
this is what they do.
And you know what's so crazy about this also, that, like you said, how the troubles did not find its way onto the field is still stunning to me. That all these distractions were going on in the background. No one called attention to it. I don't understand.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're going to experience. So obviously the initial call, the initial call happened years ago, but for 2020, the call for the Redskins to change their name, we are going to have a clip of our interview with Ben Standig from, is it the Washington Post?
From The Athletic.
Oh, no, The Athletic. But he's based in Washington.
Yes.
Based in Washington, and discussing,
who really nailed the information well on this report in a lot of ways.
Episode, and then just looking at some of the episodes and moments, I have on here for this little best of. We talk about Roger Goodell and how his role in handling the controversies, or in this case, not handling the controversies.
Yeah, that's a common theme, by the way. Roger Goodell and controversies. Those two phrases don't go together.
He runs away with it from it as if it were oppositely charged magnets.
And on top of that, he doubles down.
It's
not I'm wrong. It's that I'm not wrong. You're wrong.
Not me. You.
It's that Simpsons clip. Am I out of touch? No, it's the kids who are wrong.
You were wrong. The I'm rubber, you're glue defense.
And so obviously we're going to talk about all the controversies in this best of, and we're also going to have an interview we did with Martin McCauley, who, if you don't know that name, well, he was the guy. I'm not sure if you guys remember. Well, you guys remember. You guys out there, the audience, may not remember. But when the whole thing where they were looking up an alternate name, and this man trademarked all of them.
Well, I actually remember the term. It's actually called patent squatting.
Patent squatting, yes.
Did he coin that term?
No, actually, you have to do it very specifically, because technically it's illegal in some sorts to squat on names that professionals want to use. Because we see it in websites all the time, like where someone will steal someone's name.
Yep.
And then they'd have to pay to get it back.
Yep.
But then you see litigation, and then they win because it's illegal technically to own a site that's really not yours.
Right.
And shout out to Martin in that case, because that was a real out of left field interview.
By the way,
Mhm.
some of the names that he bought also, like that were never going to be, he like bought it all. But I think he, if I remember correctly, though, he was willing to give it away.
He was willing to give
He
them
was.
up.
He was
And for
that
whatever
dedicated.
reason, for whatever reason, Snyder, Goodell, none of them were going to entertain him.
Like, so I think this was Snyder saying, like, I'm not willing to give in.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's like, you move.
And one more, just to throw it in there, Nick. It's also the Shaggy, it wasn't me defense either.
It's the Shaggy defense.
I had to throw that in one more time before the end of the year.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. Okay. So have a listen, have a look at everything. And for all of you who celebrate Christmas in a few days, have a merry one. And we'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Obviously, this has been a movement for quite some time in the NFL, but now it has fully go into effect as a result of FedEx, the main sponsor of the team. I think the team's stadium's namesake,
FedEx Field.
FedEx Field.
Yeah.
And by the way, the FedEx CEO, a minority owner of the Washington Redskins. Now that they have spoken up, guys, what do we say? When the sponsors speak up, that is when the change happens.
When you hit Dan Snyder in his wallet, that's when you feel it.
It's very
no amount of righteous social pressure, and it was right, and it was absolutely righteous. It was the right thing to do to change the name. But no, this snake does not understand things that are not for money. So
I was gonna say it's as much because not just applying here, but applying to the Cleveland Indians, the Edmonton Eskimos, who all have also released statements about potential team name changes. It's as much a business move as it is a social move.
What about the Cleveland Indians?
It's got nothing to do with social moves.
It's
what makes him look good.
You could throw in the Cleveland Indians as well. And
I did.
They did. And I got to say, they have bandied a couple of names around. Now, we must add this as a caveat. Context is necessary. They are putting together a team to possibly research the effects of changing the name. Not that they are committed to changing the name.
Analytics.
Even in times like this, you had, fence sitting never goes away.
I think they said the total number was like $620 million worth of companies and shareholders and investors in the Redskins are pressuring Daniel Snyder, which, by the way, in my opinion, is one of the dirtiest owners in all of the NFL.
No. He is the dirtiest.
And the reason I say that is because I think he said last year, and I don't remember the direct quote, but he said, I will never change the name of the Washington Redskins.
And actually, from a business move, just one couple of quick things here to wrap things up. Some are saying that even outside of the name controversy, it may be time for like a name rebranding when you consider just how bad Washington has been for years. After a team has been so bad for so long, maybe a new logo, a new team name sounds a little more refreshing.
Well, I was in diapers the last time they were good. But again, this has nothing to do with the performance of the football team, and everything to do with why is this the only other team that still has a racist slur as their team name? You can still make money off of any kind of rebranding you do. By the way, Washington Red Tails was one of the names that was bandied about.
Red Tails, which is to honor a specific like Air Force
or to pilot unit, all black.
It was the tips of the airplane were the same color. That's why they were going to use the Red Tails.
The Red Tails regiment was all black in World War II. So again, that's a great name. That's a great thing.
The other favorite, by the way, the Washington Warriors, because the logo of the team is a warrior, a Native American warrior.
And I also heard the Red Dragons was another one I heard also.
Red Dragons, another.
Now, I don't know what you guys think about the Redskins team, if you think people are making too much of a big deal out of it or not. But I think it's more about the product on the field, not the name of the team itself, right?
I mean, you could make that argument. But I do think that you do need to change the name.
I think it's an all around problem. I think that team has just been so bad, and the people who have been running this team for the last I don't know how many years now have just been absolutely disastrous. That team has been nothing but a dumpster fire with a few exceptions here and there, namely one
RG3 and his
season.
popsicle stick legs.
I was going to say, namely for one season that RG3 actually did well as the quarterback of that.
RG3. I thought that was some kind of robot.
Yeah, you sure that's not some kind of perfume brand?
Look, obviously, I think there's a big wave going on in this country right now when it comes to race relations and the conversation and those types of conversations. And the difference I've been sort of saying with the Washington Redskins now versus all the other times it has come up, particularly in the last decade, is when it really had some larger some push nationally, is that it was always done previously in isolation, that it was just that one topic. And ultimately, as we know how these things go, there was no real money pressure for owner Dan Snyder to make a change. The NFL was not pressuring him publicly. Sponsors were not pressuring him publicly. And while there were people, opinion columnists and some others doing it, I don't know the locals were necessarily, which isn't to say that anybody isn't down, is saying the name is not an issue. I don't think it's that. But like, as somebody who grew up here, this was the team of my youth. This is what right? This is the team that you were told to root for. I mean, this was the name, right? So I don't honestly, in my heart of hearts, don't think most people around here are like, boy, this name, I don't, the heck with everybody. They don't know what they're talking about. I don't think any of us view it in those terms. And it makes this whole conversation sort of odd because you're on the inside going, wait, we're not having an issue with this. But I understand the larger conversation. And if they had ever wanted to make the change at any point in the last 20 years, for me personally, I would have been like, I totally get it. Go ahead. So I think owner Dan Snyder was not interested in making this change. He said so publicly. He's been very emphatic about it. But the difference became the NFL and the sponsors could no longer ignore it because there is this larger movement happening, as we see all over the country. And from that led to where we are, that there was no out. Once the sponsors started saying you got to make a change, there was nothing else to do, and that got us to here.
But where do you draw the line between what is just a team name and what is a team name based on slur, stereotype, or racism?
It's a great question. I think this is a question that really connects when we talk about people taking down the monuments and statues around the country, because it started with the idea of taking down things that were connected to the Confederacy, which were people against the United States of America. Totally makes sense. But then it started going beyond that, and now there's even question where I live, Washington, D.C. Hey, there's a Washington monument. George Washington had slaves. Is that appropriate? And they're like, well, that's a different conversation because the world was what it was. How do you judge a world 200-something years later? Things are different. There are things that we're doing today that people in 100 years from now will say, can you believe what those monsters were doing? Like, what is happening? So it is a tricky situation. I thought one thing that was very interesting with regards to this particular topic with the Washington Redskins team name was simultaneous to their announcement, the Cleveland Indians came out and said they also were putting their name under review. Now, I didn't hear anybody, I don't think, say that the Indians' name itself was an issue. We knew that their cartoonish mask logo was, and they did get rid of that a year or so before. So that became like, well, wait. So are we saying that all Native American imagery is taboo? And okay, I mean, this is something that's happening now with a lot of conversations in this country. Everything is right now very blurry in terms of what's the line, and I don't even know if there should be a line on a lot of things. There should be conversations, I think, constantly. But the question right now is, things are moving so fast. What is the line? Is a reasonable question to ask, for better or for worse, because everything doesn't necessarily need to change or whatever overnight, but some things do. I totally get, like I said, why people want to change this team's name. But yeah, where does it go? And obviously, if we're talking Native American imagery, Florida State Seminoles, Kansas City Chiefs, Atlanta Braves, what have you. So, that's going to come up down the line. And to that point with this team, it's not just a matter of, okay, fun, are you changing the name, but what to what? And, are you going to keep it with that Native American imagery, or are you doing something else? A lot of people have been thinking the Warriors. There was some reasoning for that locally. And if you did that, you could potentially keep just leave everything else, but change the name. But that to me seems somewhat problematic if we're saying sort of culturally, no, we really kind of want to move away from all of these things. So it's definitely a question better answered by people smarter and more versed in these topics than me. But yes, it is definitely an interesting discussion point for sure. The name change will happen. I'm not saying that because somebody told me that. I'm saying that you can't come out and say we're putting this under review and then not do it. You could say, hey, we're thinking about making a quarterback change. We're not sure if we want to go with Dwayne Haskins. Maybe we go with Kyle Allen. Then 4 days later say, nah, we're good. We're going to go with Dwayne Haskins. You can't take a topic this controversial and come out and say, yeah, we thought about it. We changed. We're not going to. We decided we're good. That's not happening. So they're going to make the name change. Whether he's doing it though because he really believes that this is the right thing to do, or because he's looking at financially his bottom line and seeing all the sponsorship money potentially going away. And yeah, I mean, at some point, Dan Snyder is already not a popular owner in town and in professional sports. You can only, I don't know if you can make things worse, but going down a path of ignoring this moment, this movement would do that. So, for whatever his motivations are, it only seems like there's going to be one possible outcome at this point.
Snyder, the owner, Daniel Snyder, originally said he wanted a different Native American logo and has since taken that back. I mean, we're talking about issues. Now he's saying that they're gonna go away from the Native American name situation. Nick, make sense of this for me.
Well, you cannot ascribe logic to a situation in which everyone involved is a complete lightspeed moron and a bigot to boot, because honestly, what exactly do you need? Does it need to have an Indian name? Seriously. Slur aside, and Redskin is a slur. Let's not go over that again. It's a slur. You wouldn't like it if it was the Washington Caucasians, people that are complaining about this. But again, it is a slur. But do you need to have Native American imagery? Drop it. Seriously, drop it.
I mean,
you don't need that anymore.
The other issue you have, and I brought this up in the interview we did with Ben, that if it's the Redskins, what's next? The Cleveland Indians was a name that they were talking about. Now, that's not as bad, but the Indians were talking about it. The Braves were talking about it. I mean,
the Braves and the Indians and the Chiefs, I can understand, because those words are not meant to be derogatory. In fact, it's more of a descriptor than it is derogatory.
Right.
You could make the argument about cultural appropriation, about a bunch of drunken white people doing an Indian chop, or doing some kind of weird bastardized version of a war chant, but that's neither here nor there.
The tomahawk chop?
Yeah. Again, but these are things that Dan Snyder has never thought of, even though we've been screaming in his face about the nickname for the past before we were even doing any sort of podcasting show at all, right? The three of us.
Yes, we were screaming about Daniel Snyder being. We thought that. Oh my God, why is the Cowboys owner Jerry Jones? We thought he was the worst owner in all of the NFL, and now I think Daniel Snyder has taken that title over due to not trying to fix a situation. Now, I said this to you, and I said this to Tom a while ago, that if they had figured out a way to maybe donate money to the Indian tribes, then it wouldn't sound so bad if they had the name, right?
Yeah, you can make an argument about that. I'm not really sure about how solid that argument is, especially considering when you are still using what is essentially the Indian equivalent of the N-word.
This is not some recent activity for me. This goes back to 2005. When I thought it would be a joke. I thought it would be funny if I applied for Washington Pigskins for a trademark. And this is not just like sitting on a domain name. If somebody applies for a trademark, they are certifying they plan to use that product in commerce. So I did all that. I got a registered trademark for Pigskins. The NFL contacted me and said, we know you're trying to get a trademark for Pigskins. That's very similar to the name of our football team, but we will allow it. So after that, I just thought that was so cool that the NFL trademark attorneys contacted me. So next I got Washington Pandas, and I didn't stop there. I got Washington Football Club. This is 5 years ago, and it was just a very expensive hobby. Okay, I ended up with 10 names. Okay, so trademarks expire in 6 years. So they're registered trademarks. They have not expired. Okay, so let's fast forward. Looks like they're going to have to change the name. Okay, so now I see a bunch of possible name changes trending. Every one of them is one of mine I already have a registered trademark for from 5 years ago. I see people are betting on names. Every one of the favorites on the odds board is one I already have. Okay, so I contacted the NFL trademark attorneys because they wrote me 5 years ago and said I could use pigskins. So I said, the subject line of the email, this was July 4th, like 10 days or so before they changed the name. The subject line was free trademarks. And I listed all these registered trademarks that I had from 2015, 10 names that were all the favorite names. And I said, you can use any of my trademarks for free if that's going to help facilitate a name change. They did not respond. And I didn't know how to reach anybody in the NBA. So I went on Twitter. I'd sent 4 tweets in 6 years. But I got on Twitter and I wrote at NFL, at NL Commissioner, please take my trademarks. I offered them to you for free on July 4th. What are you waiting for me to do? Do you want me to pay you to take my trademarks off my hands? Okay, so then 10 days later, they said they're going to change the name. Okay, so then I didn't think they'd call me because they don't need to tell me they want one of my names. I already said they can have it. All they have to do is go online and apply for the same names in every category: uniforms, bobbleheads, jerseys, calendars, whatever they want. They can apply for the trademark, and the trademark attorney doesn't even look at it for 3 months, and then they could ask me, can we have yours, or will you abandon yours or assign ours? They have to tell me. I'm not a trademark attorney. So then they said they're going to change the name. And then I read there's some trademark issues holding this up. I'm the one who is trying to facilitate a name change by offering my names for free. So that, because it's really the only way I could see they could have a registered trademark in use by the time the season starts, if they start in 7 weeks. Because getting a trademark takes 7 months minimum. If everything goes well, there's no conflict with any other marks and nobody opposes it. I had ones they could get instantaneously. And it's every name on the odds board. So yes, I said that 6 years ago. They should change the name. And it's not just about a racist name that should have been changed decades ago. It's Native American imagery. All Native American imagery has got to go. Native Americans are not mascots. The red face paint and feathers that fans wear has got to go. It's not just in professional sports. It goes all the way down to high school. And for the high schools that are still using the racist R word, they need to change the name, and the owner of the Washington football team needs to pay the expenses for them to change their names. I refer to him as Mr. Snyder, and I try not to insult him. And when I made the offer of the free trademarks, that was addressed to the NFL. Every time I made an offer of free trademarks, I was trying to communicate with the NFL. I never made such an offer to Mr. Snyder.
I'd imagine, because this is such an unusual situation. Unusual as in, I don't think this has ever happened before, and it's unlikely to happen in a culture as, I'd say, performatively progressive as the NFL wants to make us think it's becoming. But it's still a very conservative culture in terms of ownership and who is actually paying, in terms of the politics of who's actually paying the bills here. The cliff notes of it are essentially that 15 employees had accused Redskins, ownership, not necessarily ownership, but the leadership of the team, of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and they even had examples of text messages to back them up. And if you read it, it's not kind of gross. It is very, very gross.
It's disturbing, actually.
It's disturbing, as a matter of fact. And you're right. You're right, exactly. And again, Snyder, since this has come out, I think they've played it very, very coy, very close to the chest, as is expected of major sports teams when something like this happens. But the thought does cross my mind that perhaps Snyder is going to use this name change opportunity to deflect a bit from this, to say, hey, we've got a new name, new culture. That might not be the case. In fact, it probably won't be the case at all as long as Dan Snyder is the owner. I mean, we've been shouting at him for years to resign, and he's not going anywhere.
Well, I don't know if it's really resign. You want him to sell the team, right?
Yes, to sell the team.
Just looking at the statement that the NFL has made, the NFL is considering fines on the Redskins. I'm sorry. So you're going to fine an owner that's worth millions of dollars over
billions of dollars.
Right, but I'm just saying you're going to fine an owner. I think the maximum fine you could put on an owner is $5 million.
Like that's going to change anything?
We're talking about unethical. We're talking about unethical here.
We're talking about unethical. We're talking about scumbags. This is the behavior of scumbags, and this is how scumbags behave when their backs are against the wall, as scumbags are wont to do. I have said this many, many times, that this is not, again, this is who he is. This is the culture that he has allowed to fester. Whether he was directly involved in it, this is a failure of leadership from top to bottom. And we can't expect anything greater out of Dan Snyder than this. This is what he is.
Right. So this is the second team now in the last year that has had an issue with sexual advances, sexual abuse situations, and the NFL's not doing anything to step up and say, hey, Roger, maybe it's time to wake up and smell the you-know-what, because you're not seeing it.
They don't want to do anything because they don't want to be seen cracking the whip on their owners, because who does Roger Goodell really work for?
The owners.
Exactly. They're more than happy to crack the whip on the players for if they do things good and bad, for infractions minor and major.
But you know what's ironic?
But if the owners are responsible for it, they won't do a damned thing. To sum it up, it really does seem like Dan Snyder is a specific type of scumbag. Of course, you need to be an a-hole to get in the door.
Well,
when you're a North American sports owner, but this is just.
But now they're talking about now getting the owners together, like they did with Paul Richardson, and saying, "Get out. We don't need you."
Well, I thought that was happening before this came out.
No, it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't.
Even though the minority owners had said that they wanted...
That's the minority owners selling their stakes. That has nothing to do with the exact purpose of...
He is a platinum embossed scumbag. He really is. Oh, my God. It's
As long as he owns a majority stake, he's going to fight tooth and nail to hold on to this.
The Clippers were forced on the open market because of what Donald Sterling, and what Donald Sterling was, not that it was any less terrible, but still it was objectively less in that there was just one thing to worry about here.
One point though, Nick, the reason that happened, again, it goes back to the NBA is a more progressive league, so the players forced him out.
The players forced his hand, but again, the fan base, God, how much more PR hits can you take?
I don't know. I told Nick, because Nick and I spent a little bit after one of our streams, I had said that honestly, with how bad, how many hits this Washington team has taken and how bad 2020 is, we actually went through their schedule, and it could be a good argument that this could be an 0-16 team this year.
It's very possible.
People were expecting that this year anyway, but the off-field, stuff really does. It really does seem like it has a chance to bleed onto the on-field product.
I think it does, absolutely. And this team is very weak to begin with.
I mean, what do they say about off-field? It affects the on-field.
Right.
So
you wouldn't think that it does, because a lot of 0-16 teams, they were just bad because of the product on the field, not because bad was happening.
I don't know about that. The Detroit Lions of 2008 kind of had problems in the ownership, general managership. More the head coach, I think.
Not incompetent, racist, and all around.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, very fair.
Roger Goodell needs to figure out the BS that's going on in his league. With
Roger Goodell's not doing anything.
You really
No,
expect
but
him
wait a
to
minute.
do anything but just stand there in the corner and stare off into space?
Wait a minute, time out. So what I mean is, the first hypocritical step he took was going back and saying, I should apologize to Colin Kaepernick. We talked about this. And he said, oh, well, I should have been more progressive in that sense. Listen up, Roger Goodell.
Now you do that?
Psst.
The last horse finally crosses the finish line.
I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to
Bravo.
tell you a secret, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to tell you a secret. You ready?
Yes.
The NFL is not progressive.
No kidding.
When did that happen?
So
You are a liar. A filthy, filthy liar.
So I think Roger Goodell needs to wake up and realize that his league is not progressive at this point in time.
I
And
mean, it's kind of progressive because he's kind of sticking social issues. What social issues? La 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 la. It's not, but it's not progressive. Partially, or at least mostly, because of him.